This is Cameron Ferguson, who's currently the head of performance at the Gold Coast Titans. And our key topic for today's chat will be all about how to thrive in a high performance and high pressure environment. So whether you're an athlete tuning in, a parent of an athlete, or of course high performance staff, strength and conditioning coaches, you'll no doubt get some gold and some gems from this chat. So get the notepad out. And if you've got any questions for those tuning in, hit us up in the comment section below. I'm sure we'll find some time later in the show to answer your questions. But thanks for jumping on, Cam. Really looking forward to our chat, mate.
No worries, Jack. Thanks for having me.
For those that aren't aware of your work, Cam, do you mind providing a bit of a background? I guess how your passion for the industry, where it all started, and also some different job experiences you've had over your time.
Yeah, sure. I suppose it always starts from your childhood, right? I grew up in country Victoria in Gippsland. All my mates grew up playing a lot of sport, cricket, basketball, AFL. Spent a bit of time in my late teens in playing AFL and basketball, and had a passion for that. So, played up until I was about 18, and had some mates that ended up going into AFL, being drafted, and I was sort of not quite good enough there. And, I had other mates that, were tradies when they finished school, and I wasn't quite sure of what I was going to do next. So I had to, I worked for a couple of years after school and did a TAFE course in, I think it was sport and recreation, sort of a bridging course to get me into uni. Obviously, my high school marks weren't that good at the time to go straight into uni. So did a TAFE course there for 2 years. And at the time, I was keen to jump into sports science, head down a path of where I could work with elite athletes. I thought that would be the next best thing if I wasn't a pro myself. I'd love to work with professional athletes. So decided to move away from home at the time. The options that I drew up were move to WA, do the uni degree over there, or up in Queensland. And at the time, we had friends of the family living in the Gold Coast, so I moved up there for a week and explored the area. Went to an open day at the uni and just loved it. So I locked that in and moved up to the Gold Coast when I was I think 21. At Bond University, so I did a 3-year degree there. At the time, I was 21, moved out of home. I had to work 3 jobs. I was doing biochemistry and physics, which were completely foreign to me. So I was, completely out of my comfort zone there. But what appealed to me was the practical element of the degree. I think there was in the last semester, there was a component of the degree where you had to prescribe high performance programs, and so that's sort of what really appealed to me. And along the way, I did a lot of work experience as an S&C coach with local teams, and got to learn on the fly there. So had a passion for that, and come to the end of the degree, and a lot of other students were sort of looking to jump into physio and the medicine, and that clearly wasn't for me. I wanted to get my hands dirty straight away, and at the time, up on the Gold Coast, the Suns were starting up in the AFL, and I think it was 2009. They were in the TAC Cup. So I was sort of finishing up my degree there, and just went to a training session and asked if I could help out, if there's any opportunities, and looking for experience. And it's a funny thing. It was all timing, and the S&C running the program at the time had a cradle with, I think, 5 GPS units in it, and he said, "Take this, see what you can do with that. Give us some reports. Let us know how far we're going." And so, yeah, basically started from there. And the next year, 2010, they went into the VFL. So I sort of picked up some part-time work with the Suns there, and was just learning on the fly as a sports scientist. But obviously they were skeleton staff at the time, so sort of got to help out where I could, as a strength and conditioning coach. And basically that just morphed into a full-time role as I moved into the AFL. And yeah, so ended up being at the Suns for 6 years, I think it was, up until 2015. And obviously the time had finished up there at the Suns, and found an opportunity down in Sydney with the Manly Sea Eagles. So yeah, lucky enough with my partner, who also works in sport. She moved down with me to Sydney. I worked at the Manly Sea Eagles, started up as a rehab coach there, which, yeah, again, come with its challenges moving from AFL to NRL. Culturally was a big shock to the system, but really enjoyed it. Very challenging, but yeah, sort of embraced that. And 2 years into that role, we had changes of coaches. So again, sort of, yeah, challenges you to, have to thrive in high pressure environments, which is something that I believe I excel in and really, really enjoy. And the new coach was Des Hasler, who sort of, yeah, we kind of got along real well, and he saw, opportunity for me to grow in my role at Manly, which was, yeah, I'm grateful for that. And yeah, ended up running a lot of the S&C program at the Seagulls up until end of preseason last year, 2022. And then, yeah, my partner, who also works in sport, she got a job at the QAS, so pretty good opportunity for her. So repaid the favour a bit there, and yeah, we moved up. We got a 5-year-old son now, who, yeah, we're looking to move into school and just really enjoy the Queensland lifestyle. So we moved up to Brisbane and settled in, and I probably had maybe 6 months out of pro sport where, yeah, again, was challenging. Sort of, the wheels were still turning, but I had to slow the pace down a bit there for a bit. And yeah, over the last maybe 9-12 months, I've picked up work at the Titans as head of performance, which I'm grateful for. And yeah, that's sort of where I'm at now.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thanks for that background, mate. It provides, yeah, good context, and yeah, you referenced the topic quite well in thriving in high performance environments. I think
Yeah.
it's a great topic. It's one that we haven't really discussed in great detail on the show yet. So really looking forward to asking questions and diving into that, how to manage those situations and ultimately thrive out of them as well, to make an impact with the players and the club. But going back to your career, you mentioned Des Hasler. Have there been other influences or strong or mentors, if you like, that have helped shape your philosophy during that process, whether it be at the Suns, Manly Sea Eagles, or everywhere in between?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, definitely my partner Benita has been a massive influence on, me personally, but obviously in my career as well. Having someone that works in sport obviously supports me and understands the what comes with that. The pressure and working unique hours and traveling and whatnot. So definitely, Benita straightens me up a fair bit there. At the Suns, definitely Andrew Weller, who I'm forever grateful for giving me my first opportunity there, and challenged me to grow constantly, and definitely applied some skills that I've started from working with Andrew back then, and probably just the athletes that I've worked with over my journey over the last 10 or so years. I'll get a buzz out of working with kids that come from the academy systems and make it professionally into the full-time ranks in AFL and NRL. Working with older athletes like a Kieran Foran currently, who's been around for a long time now, but continually strives to improve, and that sort of rubs off on me. Always seeking ways to find improvement in yourself, despite sort of having all the accolades. As a player, he could easily rest on his laurels or what he's always done, but he's continually looking to improve. So probably the main influences. Obviously, that there's easy people that you work with, but there's also difficult people that you come across in professional sport, and I think that's definitely shaped me as a person I am today. Obviously as a person and a professional working in high performance sport, understanding how people operate and why they operate in a certain way, I think has helped shape me. And I think having that emotional intelligence to read the room and work with different kinds of people is a skill set that you definitely need in a high performance environment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way to actually look at it. It's probably not something that's been mentioned before, but the people that help you along the way and support you, but also the ones that are difficult and I
Yeah,
guess get you to think a bit differently as well, or equally making you better if you approach it that
absolutely.
way. So it's a good mindset. What in terms of looking over your career, what have been some significant highlights that sort of spring front of mind that you look back on fondly?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't tend to think about that too much, but I reckon working at the Gold Coast Suns as part of a organisation in their inaugural year, that's pretty cool when you look back on that. Everything that was happening at the time in the city of the Gold Coast, and how much support they were getting, and just being part of a new team where everything was just new. That was probably something I look back on and cherish. And probably just learning my own way through the industry. Just learning how to navigate uh, the highs and lows through your time in professional sport, and just being yourself, being authentic along the journey, that I kind of look back on and I'm proud of. So yeah, they're probably the key highlights for me. Nothing, no premierships or anything that I've been involved in yet, which is probably something that everyone's striving for in high performance sports. So hopefully, if you interview me again in a few years' time, that'll be one to say.
100%. And on the flip side, most significant challenges, and how did you learn? What did you sort of grow from facing those challenges in that moment in time?
Yeah, definitely. Finishing up at the Suns was a huge challenge for me personally. Being moved on as part of a performance team that were going in a different direction. that was a big challenge for me. Probably personally, how you handle that. But obviously professionally, working, you know, for 10 or so years on from that point, that you understand that that's what happens. But learning how to cope with change is or has been a challenge for me. Yeah, another one probably, just having the understanding of what it takes to have the emotional intelligence to sustain, or working in a high performance environment for a long period of time. Understanding that you need to have good personal skills and work with a variety of different kinds of people. Um, that's definitely a challenge, to be able to sustain that at a high level. And obviously, work, as everyone has, working through the COVID period over the last couple of years, with restrictions and having to move into bubbles and hubs, and working in uh, skeleton models where you're stripped with staff and resources. That's definitely been a challenge, but a lot of uh, learning has come from that, particularly how to sustain frameworks of models that you're using in a high performance environment. So that's been a big challenge.
Moving into the key topic of high pressure moments, I guess, referring back over to your experience where new coaches come in, are they some of the most significant high pressure moments that you can face as in a department, especially being in a lead sort of performance role when you're having change in head coach?
Yeah. So I've, obviously our team has gone through a change in coaches over the last 2 months, I think. So that's been a challenge for everyone at the football club. Obviously, we're in finals contentions at the time as well, so being able to maintain the focus was a um, big point, that we needed to remain on task there, despite having some changes in, obviously the interim coach Jim Lenahan, who's come in, has sort of adapted some messages to the group that we need to change the way that we've sort of perceived by other clubs, and in doing that we have to train a little bit differently. And so as a high performance coordinator, being able to adapt um, the training regimes that we've applied over the last 6 months all of a sudden has to be different. So making sure that players that are physically in good condition to be able to adapt to the change in loads has been a challenge. Obviously, we've got a coach coming in next year, so people, staff, players are looking laterally, worried about what's going on, and so having to be a leader in that space has been a new challenge for me. But I've enjoyed everything at the same time. So yeah, hope
Yeah,
that
well
answers
said,
that.
mate. Yeah, no, absolutely. And from your point of view, what are some helpful tips for those that are facing those situations? And like you said, you might be looking laterally, so you're feeling job security is an issue, perhaps for your staff. Players feel like, oh, are they going to, perhaps is their job security as well? Are they going to make the senior team, or are they going to be traded?
Mm.
Is there advice in terms of managing that? You talked about how the key to focusing on the now, and finals is still the goal. At that point in time when there was change, is that where he's tried to shift, I guess, staff and players to focusing on what's in front of them in terms of the season,
Yeah,
and
so
how
I
important is
suppose,
that?
yeah, the big thing for our interim coach, Jimmy, was just to focus on the now, not worrying about what's happening 2, 3, 4 weeks time. So really lowering the eyes, and focusing on what you can control right now, and that probably filters through to myself and my staff, that we've got a job at hand that's, as you would know, working week to week in professional sport. You can easily start looking about what's going to happen in the next season or over the next couple of months. But it starts from the top. So that was a message from the coach, and he was sort of living by that, and still is. So we all jumped on board with that. But I think it's important to be transparent, be open, and discussing what is happening. There's a lot of things that are out of your control at the moment, but find what you can control, and just being yourself, and it's okay to not know sometimes, but providing a forum to be able to discuss things is really important.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier as well, like the importance of emotional intelligence and the sort of personable skills. For those listening in that want to work on those areas of their coaching, like what have been some of your favourite either practices that you do to do that, or courses or resources that you've found helpful?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's just for myself in my role is being able to communicate and engage with a variety of people, whether it's the doctors or physios or massage therapists or intern S&C coaches, or so having a wide range of people that you constantly engage with is really important. And obviously the athletes, the number one priority in our industry. But I think it's really important to understand yourself, and that's something that I've learnt a lot, particularly over the last 1 to 2 years, is understanding your thoughts and feelings, and how to control your emotions, and what worry about things that you can control. Myself, I've sort of can be an overworker and trying to worry about things that I can't control. So that's something that sort of leveled me out over the last 12 to 24 months. I've sort of practiced that a bit, and it just takes time, and got to get your feet under the desk to be able to do that a lot of the time. But I'm big on continually improving, and challenge my athletes and my staff to continually improve. But obviously I've got to lead that myself. So definitely being able to be more efficient, and control how you approach situations that you're in is definitely a skill that you require in this role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said, mate. That's great advice. And going back to sort of managing the sort of stress and the anxiety that can come with the environment at times, um, what are some ways that you like to sort of manage these emotions and still keep your composure and being able to lead for the players? Like you said, they're the number one, they're the focus. So whether it be on game day or main training session, and something hasn't quite gone to plan, and you're in the moment, what are some of your areas of focus to be able to then still compose yourself and I guess perform your role and make an impact for the players?
Yep. Well, I think I'm big on having a system-based approach in our department. So having, like a lead and support kind of setup. So, if you're under the pump, or, the strength coach has a lot of things on his hand, then he can lean on, your staff or your peers to help you. So really having that support network's really important. Probably another big thing that I've learnt is that when things do go wrong, because they do in high performance sport, that you just have to trust your ability to overcome problems when they occur, rather than worrying about, oh, what if this happens, or what if we are flat today? How do I approach that? Well, through my experience, I know that you need a bit of variety sometimes, whether you know subtle ways to get the boys up for a training session. You know, but rather than worrying about what if that happens, you rely on your experience to be able to adapt on the fly, and that's something that, big thing that I've learned.
Great, mate. Thank you. And Mac Butler's just written in from LinkedIn. Do you have any systems in place for athletes or staff that can identify extra stresses?
Any systems? I think, like nothing formalized, but there's obviously having the interpersonal skills to be able to work with your athletes day to day. Obviously, you do your typical screening and well-being every day, but what doesn't come up as a question is, what's going on at home, or players are moving or have family problems, or so being able to engage with a variety of people at different levels is really important. That's probably a big one for mine. I'm not sure if that answers that question, but yeah.
Yeah, going back to, like you said, the personable skills with the
Yeah,
players and
definitely.
having that relationship. Obviously, changing head coach, that would be no surprise that would shake the environment and become pressure. What would be some other things that, since being in the lead role, that would perhaps surprise people that can add pressure, I guess, to the role, specifically when you're sort of leading a department in head of performance?
Yeah, the big one, like, you can't keep everyone happy all the time. And I suppose that's not my role to be keep everyone happy. I suppose you got to be respected before you're liked. So being able to hang your hat on, your key pillars. So being transparent and authentic and having a resilient mindset are probably the three things that I'm trying to drive within my program. To the athletes and obviously to my staff. So being able to do that, probably a big thing that I've learnt is, working with the corporate side of the business. That was definitely something I never thought of before starting the role. So being able to keep, the membership side of things and commercial engagement and stuff like that, having an understanding of what they need to achieve, whilst applying that in the schedule or keeping them happy at times. So that's been a challenge. Probably isn't filtered through to the immediate staff, but can have a flow-on effect to the playing group. There'll be times where they've got media commitments or have to do a commercial offside, and being able to understand and read the room. There's certain times where that's going to affect their performance. So being able to stand up for the players and help them out where possible is probably a stressor. That's something that I hadn't really thought of before coming into this role.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. That's is there a sort of a minimum requirement? I imagine there is, but like, is there a minimum requirement that each player has to do, or is it just more the squad? So in some sense, you might select some players to do it and share the load. or does
Yeah,
everyone have a minimum requirement that they've got to do when it comes to that media corporate side of things?
yeah, bit of both. I think there's a minimum obligation that the players, have to sign off on certain amount of hours a week or a month. But then your high profile players obviously are required even more. So they're the ones that we have to get right, physically and performing week to week. So their commitments outside of football are higher as well. So being able to manage that where possible's a challenge, particularly being Queensland based. Sometimes I have to fly down to Sydney to do Fox Sports shoots and um, you know captain's days and stuff like that is gets challenging being able to schedule that in. Um, but yeah, it's sort of part of the role is to manage that part for the physical performance as well.
Hmm. And that's something that you would act as sort of the middleman in that aspect, knowing what the media team need, then liaise with the players, and then try to organise that. Like you said, you don't want them to miss a. Ideally, they wouldn't miss a main training session, or you know. So
Yeah,
is it on you to sort of schedule that in as well with the players
oh,
where
it's
it fits
it's
in for their
more
performance?
yeah, it's more coordinating. The media and marketing team. This is our schedule, and then they'll ask, can we have these four players after training on this day, or these three players tomorrow morning before training. So being able to understand the balance of we need to engage with the community because it's performance based industry. We need members and people coming through the gates, particularly when we haven't been a successful club. But at the same time, you don't want to burn both ends of the candles. That the players are doing a 2 hour promo at 6 a.m. before training, main training at 9 a.m. So yeah, having an understanding of where to balance that's a challenge.
Hmm. Hmm. And going back to managing pressure from the athlete's perspective, there's a feeling that pressure can reveal character as well, and there can be some great learning um, from that perspective. Like, how do you sort of help educate the players that potentially challenging times can come the best growth and best learning, that perhaps with a growth mindset they'll be better for it in the future. How do you sort of help them get into that mindset if they're finding that challenging at the time?
Yeah, it's hard. I think um, it's really important to challenge everyone, all your athletes and staff, but it's just as, if not more important, to show that you support them. So, if you're going through a hard time or out of form, or you're injured, or can't get your spot back in the team, it's really important to be able to challenge your athlete. These are the three reasons why you're out of the squad, or these are the three benchmarks that you need to tick off in your rehab to get back to full training, or these are the three areas that you need to improve your game on. So being open and honest about that with the athlete's really important. But at the same time, it's you need to be able to put your arm around the athlete and give them your time and energy to help them, get better at those areas as well. I think that's important, particularly for we've got a lot of young athletes in our squad, and sometimes they just want to know that we're um, backing them in to do a job over a long period of time, and trust that you're going to have bad days and bad games, but we're backing you in over the long haul, and that gives them confidence to get out of those tough times.
Mhm. And leadership traits, I guess, on game day, like um, how does the club go about educating the players during the week to ultimately empower the athletes and the leaders to be able to make the calls in the moment during a game when the pressure's at its highest?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I suppose it's about training, you know, certain aspects of a game, different scenarios when this occurs. How do we play? And trust that the leaders drive that. We're still going through that stage with our group. We're really young, so we need those vocal leaders. So we're challenging guys to certain players to get out of their comfort zone and speak up and being able to challenge one another, but also show that they're supporting them as well. That's an area of growth that we're currently going through. But yeah, I'm not sure if I've answered that question for you.
Oh yeah, that makes it. Yeah, you got to train it. Got to put it in practice. Makes sense.
That's right.
And then final one. Have you got a successful story from your previous experience that sort of springs front of mind where an athlete or a team was going through, or even a staff member, a significant, challenging time with lots of pressure, and in the end, when they came out of it, they were much better for it.
It probably takes me back to 2021 when we went through that big COVID lockdown. So I was at Manly at the time. We started the season 0-4, so we were under the pump. The coach was under pressure, and we got to make changes. And these players aren't performing, but to our credit, we stuck to the process and stuck to the systems that we implemented. Didn't change our training regime. Obviously, we were looking to improve constantly, and we come out of that. COVID hit. We went in a bubble. We had to pack up and move to Queensland, mid-season. So again, our system was strong enough to be able to replicate that in a different environment. And we ended up, playing finals and played in a prelim, close to getting into a grand final. So that was something that, we'll put under the pressure tester there. And, obviously we didn't win the comp, but I thought that's a good example of, the start of the year we were under a lot of pressure, particularly the coach, and we held our nerve and kept driving the players, and we stuck to what we believed was what was right for them, and it probably showed. We had a player win Dally M of or the best player of the comp in NRL, and we had a lot of players having career years at the time, so yeah, that was definitely a highlight.
Yeah, it's massive. That's a perfect experience and story to share in this conversation. You mentioned sort of sticking to the task of this and trusting the process and the systems. I imagine, 0-4. After a few weeks, there would have been lots of things thrown up to try and make change. Was it the leaders that were really strong, sort of the key stakeholders, both players and staff, that really kept sticking fat, or was that more of a collective decision that was made across the whole board? Sort of talk us through, I guess, that situation where you stuck to it. Where did the sort of thinking come from?
Yeah, it's probably a bit of everything. I think, the leadership group of the players were big on sticking to the task at hand and support each other, and we'll get through this. And I think driven by the coaches, we were able to stick to the course and not tip everything upside down and panic. And because we didn't do that, the players bought into what we were selling. So it sort of feeds itself, yeah.
Yeah. Very good, mate. Is there anything that you want to touch on, Cam, before we move on to the last three questions that are outside of the key topic? But in terms of thriving in high-performance environments, we've discussed a fair bit in detail there, but anything that you want
Nothing
to
really,
wrap
mate.
it up with?
Yeah, no, I'm all good, thanks.
In your work life, pet peeves, anything that sort of fires you up from an industry perspective?
Yeah, Probably uncertainty. People that are uncertain or a bit wishy-washy or about what they're doing is or or why they're doing it is probably strikes a nerve a bit, or um, people that have their own agendas, in a team environment. Um, Obviously doesn't sit well with me. People operating in silos and not sort of collectively working together is something that I'm trying to get our department to really focus on working together and be fully transparent and challenging the status quo. So trying to always look to improve, and just because this is the way that it's been done doesn't mean it's the best way. So having that mindset, I think, is really important.
And where does that philosophy come from? Have you sort of experienced where it's the opposite, where it is quite rigid and this is the way we've done it and we'll always do that? Or is it more just you've seen the benefits of the mindset of constantly looking to get better?
Yeah, a bit of both. I think coming from AFL to NRL was an eye opener. There was things that culturally and vice versa in AFL, things that is just how it's done. So being able to challenge that a bit, coming to NRL, the way that you train, you know, how you challenge athletes to constantly get better, rather than this is how I train, or this is how I've rehabilitated an injury, or this is how the training schedule should look like. There's always ways to look to evolve. And obviously, I mentioned him earlier, that working with someone like Kieran Foran, an older athlete who's 33, he's been around forever. He's gone through a lot, physically, and to be able to constantly look to improve and to get your body better, you have to evolve and adapt and train differently, to survive in high performance environments. So, yeah, to be rigid and say this is just how we do it isn't sustainable for athletes over a long period of time. You have to look to evolve.
Hmm. No, that's awesome. And what about favourite way to spend a day off?
I'd like to think I go all right at surfing, but since I moved to Brisbane, I haven't been in the water a lot. So I'd like to head to the beach a lot more. Living in Brizzy, I'm probably in between Noosa and Coolangatta, so going to one of those spots would be ideal, and obviously spending it with my family and a 5-year-old boy. Yeah, that's the ideal for me.
Yeah. And in August of 2023, during this recording, what are you most excited about for the rest of the year, mate? What's on the horizon?
Just business as usual for me. It's pretty boring, but I'm still really excited at the position I'm in at the moment, and the direction that the club is going in. Obviously, we're not winning as many games as we'd like, but being able to hopefully influence a lot of young athletes, and help shape them moving forward is really exciting, and find every day a challenge. So sort of not looking too far ahead, but yeah, really keen to see how this group goes over the next 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, they're in good hands, clearly, and really appreciate you
Thanks.
jumping on and sharing us with this, your experiences, but also advice and practical tips that both coaches and athletes can apply to their game to make themselves better. For those that have any follow-up questions or want to connect and look into your work, mate, is there a place on social media to get in contact?
Yeah. I think it's Ferguson Cam. I'm not too active on the socials. I think it's Ferguson Cam, and obviously on LinkedIn as well, Cameron Ferguson. Yeah, if you want to reach out, that's fine. Happy to
Yep.
message you back. So I appreciate you pulling up that photo of me as well. From about 15 years ago, the hairline's a bit different, but it just shows how active I am on the socials.
Huh. Yeah, I'll have to double check that one. It doesn't spring to mind. My marketing assistant puts together
Yeah,
the
nice.
thumbnails, but I'll
I
have to have a
love
look.
that.
So it was a few years ago, was it? She's
Yeah, it
looked
was a
after
while ago. I might have to update it.
you. Yeah, flickers a photo. We'll update it for the podcast. Well,
Yeah, no
thanks
worries.
again, mate, and yeah,
No
really
worries.
appreciate it. Thank you for everyone that's tuned in, and Mac Butler, great to see you engage, mate, and send in your question. For our next podcast, we're going to have Blair Mills, which is on the 16th of August. That'll be at 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So make sure to tune in. Thank you for everyone that's tuned into this chat. If you've tuned in halfway through, make sure to listen to on the YouTube channel, and then we'll release it on our podcast in the next few weeks. So thanks again, Cam. Really appreciate it, mate.